Tonight on Southern Newsweek, basketball fans get a chance to meet Oklahoma-based player Steven Adams. TV journalist Amanda Miller visits Dunedin to promote her new documentary. And Enviro School's pupils offset CO2 emissions through tree planting. Kia ora and good evening, I'm Sophie Morris. Starstruck basketball fans were given the chance of a lifetime this week, attending a camp in Dunedin held by Kiwi NBA star Steven Adams. It's the third in a series of camps as the Oklahoma Centre looks to promote the sport in his home country. And for 400 youngsters from the South, it was also a chance to pick the star's brain.
A day they'll never forget, budding young local basketballers getting the chance to learn a few tips from Kiwi NBA star Steven Adams. The big OKC Centre in Dunedin today for the last in a series of 3 camps promoting basketball in his home country.
This camp in particular here, this is all about just fun. Just getting kids to come in, smile if they've been having a bad week, whatever, and that's all it is. That's what this whole camp is just about.
It's the first time Otago's hosted an Adams camp with the 400 available spots snapped up in a matter of hours. The camps are becoming a regular fixture down under in the NBA off-season. Adams has just completed his 5th campaign with the Thunder and says New Zealand players are now definitely on the radar of US scouts.
One thing about New Zealand is that we're Kiwis and we are humble and we work hard. You know what I mean? And we're great culture builders. And so that's why we're so attractive to them.
And as well as getting a glimpse of what a size 13 shoe actually looks like, today's media conference was also a chance for the youngsters to ask some probing questions of their own.
Does your long hair and moustache get hot and sweaty during your games, and do you think you'll ever cut it short?
Good question. Yeah, it really does. It's real gross. But I could use it so my hair gets real sweaty, especially in a ponytail or bun. So like, if a person's defending me, I do that. And like, what's them in the eye, and they get like really mad.
The camps are run by the Sporting Pathways Trust, with all profits put into youth development, education initiatives and basketball development in Dunedin, the South today.
TV journalist Amanda Miller visited Dunedin this week to help promote her first feature-length documentary. Her film Celia looks at the life and message of social campaigner Celia Lashley, who passed away in 2015. Lashley was probably best known for her book about raising boys entitled He'll Be Okay.
Happy to be briefly back in Dunedin, TV journalist Amanda Miller back in her hometown to promote her first feature-length documentary. The film Celia covers the life and social campaigns of New Zealand author Celia Lashley. Miller says Lashley was concerned about the state of New Zealand society.
She covers the territory in terms of social messages about relationships between men and women, the way we raise boys, domestic violence, the way so many of our children are in state care, the state of our prisons. We've got far too many people in prisons, and she was a prison manager for the women's prisons for a long time.
I am seeking to touch the nerves of middle-class New Zealand to get off their butts and understand how serious a problem we have.
She says Celia Lashley's message is for all New Zealanders.
The message is for all New Zealanders. This film will hit people at different places and in different spaces, so it will be really resonant to people for a whole lot of reasons in terms of where they're at with the relationship, where they're at perhaps through losing somebody through death, through cancer, or what they're thinking about in relation to domestic violence. Everything that matters to New Zealanders is in this film.
And while Miller's first feature-length documentary is attracting full houses, she's not making plans for the next one straight away.
This has been an enormous piece of work for me, and I owe it to my family to spend some time with them and just see how this is going before I actually commit to anything remotely connected to the D word.
Celia screens at Dunedin's Region Theatre at 6 o'clock tonight and again tomorrow morning in Dunedin, the South today.
5 historic planes could soon be joining the fleet at Wanaka's National Transport and Toy Museum. Broadcaster Paul Brennan is putting his love of aviation behind the push for the new acquisitions. There are 2 craft still operational and 3 that aren't, but he hopes they can all return to New Zealand.
The last remaining Air New Zealand DC-8 aircraft in existence could be saved from the crusher if some New Zealand-based aviation enthusiasts have their way.
The oldest is the DC-8, former ZK-NZC. It was the third DC-8 delivered to Teal Air New Zealand, as it was back in 1965. I think it was June 65 that it arrived.
Paul Brennan is one of the people keen to see historic New Zealand aircraft returning and says the last remaining DC-10 could also be saved from recycling. He says the DC-10 is a huge part of New Zealand's aviation history.
It's the only original Air New Zealand DC-10 left on the planet, and the historical fact associated with this airframe is that was the aircraft that Captain Gordon Vetty guided the lost Cessna pilot to safety over the Pacific back in the late 70s, so that has that significance. And also we know that the DC-10 does occupy quite a big part of our history with the Erebus disaster, etc. And it was the aircraft that built our overseas tourism industry on wide-body, first aircraft to take the Corrie to London.
Brennan says the aircraft that brought the Beatles to New Zealand is still in working order and is the fourth of 5 planes thereafter.
And the two operational, ironically, the oldest, the Electra ZK-TEB, the aircraft that brought the Beatles to New Zealand. Of course, there's the famous film of that with the tickies on the steps, and we'd love to recreate that scene. That's operating as a water bomber in Canada for Buffalo Airways.
The last 747 delivered to Air New Zealand is also on their radar, and Brennan hopes the 2 operational planes can be flown home to New Zealand. In Wanaka, the South Today.
A group of pupils got some time out from the classroom to plant trees in Dunedin's Walton Park. The pupils were taking part in the National EnviroSchools program and learning how trees can offset CO2 emissions.
Year 7 to 10 pupils beautifying a previously felled DCC pine forest beside Walton Park. Otago Regional Council's EnviroSchools coordinator Robin Zink says today's planting effort is putting into practice the theory of the cost of carbon emissions.
This morning we were looking at how the Earth's climate works. We also looked at the carbon cycle, and one of the things we got the students to do was calculate the amount of travel they do by car every week and the amount of emissions they produce from that travel and how many trees they need to plant to mitigate those emissions. And so this afternoon we're out here planting trees.
DCC EnviroSchools facilitator Daniel Jeffson describes these pupils as the eco-warriors of Dunedin's local schools.
Usually what happens is a school will have like a group, an Enviro group, and they'll be committed to sustainability around the school, and it could be things like integrating sustainability into the curriculum. It could be about beautifying their school or making connections with the community. So when a workshop like this comes up, the teachers that we work with, they ask for students who are interested, so it's a volunteer basis, and those who are interested, they sign up and they come along, and this is the sort of things that they do.
And the Otago Regional Council is always happy for people to become more informed about environmental issues.
I think the Otago Regional Council is really keen to have young educated people who are interested in the environment and interested in sustainability and educated in a way so that they can engage in that conversation in a really constructive way.
Adjacent to the current planting are trees planted last year and clearly doing well. It's hoped the pupils will get a chance to come back in a few years' time and see how much the area has changed. In Dunedin, for the South Today.
After the break, a former Cadbury vintage Ford truck is prepared for display, and some Alexandra residents object to a proposed new community centre. Welcome back. Some of the Cadbury World displays are being put safely into storage until their exhibition in a new museum set to open soon in Dunedin. The items include the elves who toiled in the window display, plus some of the vintage trucks painted in Cadbury purple.
Getting a gentle push into its new temporary home. The old Cadbury model Ford TT is manoeuvred into the workshops of the Dunedin Fire Restoration Society. President Joe Hayde says the car was gifted to them by Mondelez and has been earmarked for a new transport museum set to open in Dunedin in a year or so.
We had no real interest in the Cadbury stuff, but we didn't want to lose it, and we knew that hopefully in the next 12, 18 months, or 12 months anyway, that we may be moving to a new location where we will be able to open it up as a museum.
After the Society repairs a few rust spots, the truck will be ready to be exhibited along with other iconic Cadbury memorabilia.
The intention is eventually to have this old truck, and we've actually got the puppet shows that used to be as you walked into Cadbury World. We've got them as well. So one part of the museum, for the Transport Museum, will be for the Cadbury display.
The old Ford was actually brought to life by a Fire Restoration Society member before it went to Cadbury's.
This particular one, I understand, was in a cockey's paddock, and it was rescued by one of our members who did it up. And I think it was before he was before the society was even founded, and he rescued it and did it all up, and it ended up at Cadbury's.
And while the truck needed a push into the workshop, it's still pretty much operational.
From what I understand, they had the motor running recently. When I say recently, in the last, I think it was about 5 or 6 months ago, he said he started it up. So there's not a lot to get it back to being roadworthy, I don't think. I mean, they're pretty simple anyway.
The traditional Cadbury colours and writing are set to remain on the vehicle. In Dunedin, for the South Today.
Residents claim a proposed community centre to be built next to an historic church could set a precedent for Arrowtown's character to be whittled away. The No Leaf Incorporated Society was formed to object to the Olive Leaf Centre's trust proposals for a multi-purpose building beside the St Patrick's Catholic Church.
An open day for the public to have a look for themselves at the proposal for a new community centre in Arrowtown. Large models of the Olive Leaf Centre were on display in an effort to convince locals of the project's worth.
We hope that the whole community of Arrowtown and far beyond Queenstown, the whole Wakatipu district and beyond, all the many visitors that come regularly to this place will see that as a really lovely venue.
But a group has been formed in opposition to the centre. The No Leaf Incorporated Society says it's highly inappropriate and contravenes the long-established and long-agreed-upon rules for the historic part of Arrowtown.
The historic zone is a result of about 30 years of district plans, community workshops, and a lot of implementation of those guidelines and plans. And so the result of that 30 years is the way Arrowtown looks now.
He says there's significant opposition among the locals. Some residents are questioning whether enough community consultation has taken place before the plans were drawn up. Others have raised the issue of how the project will be funded.
We see this proposed building as completely out of line with the guidelines and the practicalities that have been implemented over the last 30 years.
But many others support the centre as a valuable local hub and say it's well designed. Ballot says the building will be a facility for the whole community.
And I hope that these ones that don't agree with it at the moment will see that their objections are unfounded.
Public submissions on the plans will be accepted by Queenstown Lakes District Council until mid-September. In Arrowtown, the South Today.
A documentary about dogs which can detect a disease wreaking havoc on New Zealand's honeybees is up for an international award. Sarah Height's film $1 Million Nose looks at how American foulbrood, or AFB, can now be sniffed out by detector dogs trained by a Dunedin man.
Doing what he does best, dog handler Rene Glure training dogs to use their powerful sense of smell to find a disease ravaging beehives across the country.
The dogs can detect preclinical American foulbrood, so the dogs can detect the spores of the disease. Once a beehive has the disease, the beekeeper, from a legal point of view, is required to destroy it. The dogs are able to detect that before the beekeeper can see the disease.
Glure says the best detector dogs are the ones who are crazy about fetching a ball. This is then used as a reward once they've detected the disease in a hive. The training program appears easy at first while they're indoors, but moving outside is a different story.
Going outside, dealing with the bees, dealing with the weather, the distractions, that was quite challenging because we can't search the house when the bees are flying, because otherwise the dogs get stung, and they get stung often enough, they'll say, don't want to do this anymore. So yes, so quite a few challenges.
Glor and his dogs are the subject of a new documentary by Otago University master's student Sarah Height called $1 Million Nose. He says being followed around by a film crew was a worthwhile experience.
It's been very interesting, and I really hope Sarah's going to do well with her documentary.
And he hopes the use of detector dogs will help end American foulbrood disease in New Zealand.
I feel there's a bit of question mark how successful it's going to be in eradicating the disease. But with different tools, dogs and other technology, possibly can be eradicated.
That message set to be spread far and wide, with Height's documentary making it into the finals of the Science Media Awards in the US, in Dunedin, the South today.
Queenstown Airport Corporation has come under pressure over its proposals to significantly extend its aircraft noise boundaries. The corporation has been presented with a petition signed by almost 1,500 objectors.
Excessive noise and an alarming increase in tourism. The main objections from Frankton and Kelvin Peninsula residents to proposals to extend Queenstown Airport's noise boundaries and passenger numbers. They presented a 1,500 strong petition to the Queenstown Airport Corporation, making their intentions clear.
There hasn't been a strong voice, and I think with just 6 days getting this many signatures without it even being on Facebook is pretty good. We did it the old-fashioned way at community association and walking the streets and going to clubs.
The airport wants to almost double the number of annual aircraft movements and more than double annual passenger movements by 2045. The community groups say the changes would bring an alarming increase in tourism, which could lead to the community resenting tourists.
It depends if the town can actually handle it, and at this stage the feedback we're certainly getting is no, it can't. So I'd say there'd be a slight negative backlash if it did happen without the supporting infrastructure behind it.
The group suggests strategic decisions should be made by the community and the council rather than the Queenstown Airport Corporation.
Because what we need is the Wanaka Airport Master Plan and the Queenstown 2050 vision document sorted so that we can give context and information and analysis to the noise boundaries, because we need that information and the vision first.
Both associations have also made submissions on the noise boundaries plan, showing overwhelming opposition from residents surveyed by the groups. QAC's annual report shows passenger numbers were up to over 2.1 million, a 13% increase on last year. The airport will now consider the residents' petition and has started reviewing consultation submissions in Queenstown, the South today.
After the break, New Zealand's first deep-water fishing vessel in 20 years calls into Dunedin, and the Supreme Award at Central Otago's Wool On event goes to a gore designer. Welcome back. The first deep-water vessel to be commissioned in New Zealand's fishing fleet for 20 years has called into Dunedin on its first visit. The Tokatu was built in Norway for Sealord and is equipped with the latest in both navigational and fish processing technology.
Calling in to offload processed fish and change some crew, the country's latest and largest deep-water fishing vessel berthing at Dunedin's X and Y wharf. The vessel, named the Tokatu, comes brand new from Norway and has cost Sealord $70 million. While the vessel's home port is Nelson, she'll be operating out of Dunedin until early next year. Sealord Fleet Manager Bill Healy says the ship is a major addition to their fleet.
This is the first new vessel that Sealord have had in over 20 years. In fact, it's the only new vessel in the fleet, brand new vessel in New Zealand's fishing fleet in over 20 years. And Sealord had the last one. The step change between our last new boat and this boat is phenomenal.
At the moment, the boat is still undergoing tweaks and technicians are being flown in from Norway as further processing equipment in the ship's factory is being commissioned.
I liken this to a Formula One team that doesn't have a car, and every other Formula One team gives them the best parts of their car, and you've got to get it together. Yeah. It'll take a little bit of time to get it operational. But the signs that we've seen so far tell us that once we are fully operational, it will be a fantastic asset to our fleet.
Captain Rex Chapman is impressed with the technological sophistication of his vessel.
There's a lot of new technology, and it's good technology, smart. You're doing the same thing, but you're doing it smarter. The whole engine room, the winches regenerate power back into the grid when you're paying away. It's fuel efficient. The factory is a major step forward in technology.
The Takatu will be fishing in New Zealand's 200-mile exclusive economic zone, which includes ranging as far south as the Auckland and Campbell Islands. In Dunedin, for the South Today.
Gore designer Andre Johnston has won the Supreme Award at last weekend's Wool On creative fashion event with a hand-embroidered dress that took hundreds of hours to make. It was the first time the 37-year-old had entered the show, and she wasn't the only one in her family to be recognised on the night.
Taking the raw product to the next level, hundreds of people gathered in Alexandra over the weekend for the Wool On creative fashion event. Designers had a choice of 9 categories to enter, with everything from streetwear to avant-garde. Judges spent 2 days mulling over the entries, which had to be constructed of at least 75% wool. The Supreme Award going to Gore designer Andre Johnston for her handcrafted design for the love of spring.
I'm in a bit of shock actually, quite overwhelming. Really excited, yeah.
It's been a labour of love for Johnston, who juggled caring for her 2 young children and working at a jewellery store with hundreds of hours of design time.
Possibly anywhere between 200 and 300 hours. Every night for about 3 to 4 months was past midnight, 1 a.m, weekends, 2 a.m, that sort of thing for months, just to get it going, get it finished really.
Johnston's been designing for about 20 years and was initially taught by her mother Viv Tamlin. Not to be outdone, Mum was also among the award winners this year, taking out the streetwear category.
Yeah, we've been doing it a few years. Andre has got her degree in fashion and design, and then after following her for a few years, I just decided, I'm going to have a go at this, and we bounce ideas off each other.
And while she won the Supreme Award last year, she's more than happy to see the crown passed on to her daughter. As for the event itself, organisers are hoping to continue the tradition of making every show bigger and better than the last. In Alexandra, the South Today.
And finally, if you're feeling a bit peckish, here's an idea. While powdered locusts may not sound like the most appealing ingredient, a group of Otago entrepreneurs say they could be the next superfood, potentially used in baking, smoothies and savoury foods. Ento, a company made up of a group of science, law and commerce students from Otago University, have entered a project in the Audacious Business Challenge with the help of a local locust farmer.
Turning garden variety insects into a nutty flavoured grainy brown powder with no part of the insect wasted. That's the aim of Ento, a company made up of a group of Otago University students.
So we're hoping that little guys like this basically become the future of food in New Zealand.
They originally focused on products made from crickets as part of a global enterprise project, but have since changed their focus to locusts. Manda says the group is keen to prove insects are not a novelty food item.
They've got more protein than beef. They've got more wriggle than most beef cows as well, and they're also they've got a lot of iron, they've got a lot of calcium, and they produce 1/1800th of the emissions of cattle as well.
They're entering the product in this year's Audacious Business Challenge, the marketing strategy about breaking down the barrier people have to eating insects.
So we think they're pretty cool, and we hope that other people do too and start eating them soon.
The locust powder will need certification from the Ministry for Primary Industries, showing it's safe for human consumption, slightly more palatable for some than eating them whole. In Dunedin, the South Today.
That's all for Southern Newsweek. Get online and check us out on Facebook or keep up with Southern News via our website, channel39.co.nz. I'm Sophie Morris. Thanks for watching.
supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.